this week's episode of Coffee with a Career Coach. I'm very excited for our guest today, and I will let her introduce herself in just a moment. But before I do that, my name is Erica O'Toole. I'm the Associate Director of the Career Development Center. And as we do every Coffee with a Career Coach, talk about what's in our coffee. You can see I barely have any left, but it is the Ponder Pumpkin Caramel Coffee. I'm
Ooh.
finally into pumpkin season, even though I love my summers. Bitsy, I will go ahead and hand it over to you if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I am Lilley. I'm currently a senior here at Central Michigan University. I'm majoring in marketing with a sales concentration. I'm from about 2 hours south of here from Farmington, Michigan. And some of my future career aspirations include working in the marketing space for health and wellness companies, specifically in the brand development space, and creative marketing. And in my cup, I've just got some delicious black coffee. I'm just a black coffee
Nice.
drinker. I like it simple.
Nice. I love it. Well, I'm super excited to have you on because you worked in our office for a while in employer relations, and we loved having you here. So it's always fun to bring back a former student that has worked in our office.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I loved working at the Career Development Center.
Okay, so you are on today to talk about your internship.
Mhm.
So could you discuss how you found your internship? So the process you went through, if it was like in person or a
Mhm.
virtual interview, and then how long was your search and maybe how many you applied for?
Okay. So would say I started applying for internships for this past summer, kind of around this time last year.
Okay.
So I wanted to be proactive about it. I would say I really kicked it into gear probably in November, October, November. I would say I applied to probably close to 11 to 15 different
Okay.
companies. I think I started to realize that the market right now is a little hectic. And especially if you're applying to jobs on LinkedIn, you're going to see posts that have like 250 applicants. So it's really overwhelming at times to make yourself stand out in the systems where they're just combing through your resume so quickly, and they might pass over you. So one of the companies, actually, my boss at the Career Development Center, Jacob, kind of put me on to this company. It's called Jack Morton Worldwide, and they are an experiential marketing firm, which means that they do marketing for companies, but through experiences for customers. So they plan really cool interactive events. For one example is like for Adidas, they were launching a new brand of swimwear, and so they built like a see-through swim tank where people could go and like dive in, and it would take a video of them and then project that into one of the largest billboards
Wow.
in the world. So they do cool things like that to try and engage consumers. So anyways, Jacob brought that company to my attention, and I thought it was really, really cool. So I ended up applying online to one of their project management internship roles.
Okay.
And it was kind of one of those scenarios where there were like 200 applicants and I was not hearing back from them. And then Jack Morton actually came to campus, and I thought that is my opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to their little presentation on campus and met with, his name is Jim Kent. He's an executive producer in the Detroit office. And that was the best thing I did because it gave me the opportunity to really network with him and kind of represent myself to their company and make a great first impression. So after that process, he actually ended up calling me the next day and telling me that his internship in production was filled already, just in that 1 day time frame. So it moves really quick. But he said there's another opportunity, and we kind of just had a phone interview, and he let me know what it was about. And I ended up being hired as a production coordinator for the Jack Morton office. So it was kind
That's
of like a mix
awesome.
of, yeah, it was kind of like a mix of in person, on the phone, emailing, kind of.
Yeah. So you touched on a couple things there that I kind of want to emphasize to students that could be watching right now. And
Mm-hmm.
anyone that's watching, please feel free to answer or to put in some questions as well for Bitsy. One of the things that you said is that you were a little overwhelmed in the search. And I think that so many people can relate to that, but
Mm-hmm.
students always feel like they're the only ones in that boat, right? They kind of log in, they see all of these applicants, average job posting attracts about 250, and
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like that's kind of what you
Yeah.
experienced. So I think one thing to just, remind any students watching is it's overwhelming to everybody. but to just be persistent, like Bitsy said. And I love that you went and talked to them in person, because we always encourage that here. That personal connection, even if you're reaching out on LinkedIn or anything, can really set you ahead of the group. So I'm glad you touched on all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So during your internship, what were kind of like the day-to-day duties that you had?
So I was working directly with the executive producer who hired me. And so we were working on two projects for General Motors. So one was their Women's Retail Network meeting, which is a meeting for women and minority dealers.
Okay.
And that was happening in August. I was onboarded in May. And then the next meeting was their professional development days that happens every year. And that's a big meeting for about 1,200 to 1,500 of their sales reps. And that was going to be held out in Denver.
Okay.
So I was working on both of those projects simultaneously.
Wow.
But one of my main duties was to book travel for all of the crew that was going to be going to both of these events, and communicating with vendors who we were hiring, because one was in Florida, one was in Denver. So we had to find vendors in those locations for all of the things you can't even possibly imagine, like the nitty gritty details. It was a very detail oriented role. So communicating with them, getting quotes from them, comparing it to other quotes that we received, the process of vetting those vendors, and then communicating with the client at General Motors and figuring out their creative direction, and then taking that and working internally with our creative director and our account director to kind of just make the vision come to life. But a lot of my role was, like I said, the logistics behind it, and also creating we call it the run of show. So creating the massive document that's like the minute by minute, everything that's happening at the hotel sites, when vendors are arriving, and making sure that I kept that up to date so we could use it on site. And that's kind of like the Bible on site that everybody has to follow to make sure. And then I actually ended up being able to go to Florida and execute the project, and go to Denver and execute that project. So
Wow.
it was really, really amazing to be kind of like the on-site point of contact for all of the hotel personnel and the vendors. It was a really amazing experience, especially in regards to professional corporate communication and working with so many different personality types to make everything go smoothly.
That's awesome. And that's also kind of part of why I do this and I bring interns on, because we want students to know your internship's not about getting coffee, right?
Yeah.
It's about being hands-on. And it sounds like you really got to have a great experience even traveling. So
Yeah, it was definitely an amazing experience. Learned so, so much. And I think one of the biggest things about internships and why students should definitely get more than just one. I know for a lot of majors, you have to get an internship as part of graduation protocol, but I would encourage students to get more than one, maybe one every summer if that's possible, because the beauty of it is you get to be in an industry just for like a 3-month period of time. And after that, it's not like you've committed to this company. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But if you do, you've made amazing connections. And if you don't, you've learned so much about yourself, and you have a better direction of where you want to go in the future after you graduate.
yeah, that's some really great advice, because we see that so much, that connection from internship to
Mm-hmm.
full-time offers, because they know you, they've seen the work that you've done, they've had the experience of training you and all of that. So I'm glad you touched on that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how you kind of took coursework and everything you learned at CMU. How did you kind of transfer that into your internship?
So I would say the biggest classes that helped me the most while I was in this internship experience were definitely my communication classes and my marketing 450 class, which was a marketing research class. Because one of the really cool things was when I was at the meetings on site, and the GM presenters were giving their presentations to their sales staff, and they're going over data about their company. One of the global vice presidents was talking about things that I learned in my classes, and I actually could understand what they were talking about. And it was just really, really cool to see that connection between a massive company like General Motors, and one that is so prominent and successful in the automotive industry, and what I'm learning in school in my classes. And I think a lot of times it's so hard for students to go through like marketing classes or just writing classes and think, how am I going to use this? I'm going to learn everything I need to know on the job. So why am I doing this? But there are certain things that it's really valuable to know. And so it was really cool seeing that connection. And then I would also say my writing intensive and marketing communications classes really helped prepare me for the amount of professional writing that I had to do in this role. Because, like I said, I was working with vendors in Florida and in Denver, and I had to do a lot of emailing, both internally and externally. And I was able to learn from my boss kind of the hierarchy of how you email internally within your own company and how you email when you're talking to clients and how you email when you're talking to vendors. So I would say a lot of those skills that I learned in my communications classes were kind of foundational. And then you do build upon that when you're in the role and you're learning from the people around you.
Absolutely. I love that you talked about communication because that's something that we do presentations on as well, because it's so important
Mhm.
to know how to send those emails, right? We're so used to like texting and really short messages to people,
Mhm.
but actually formally writing an email to those different groups is a huge learning experience. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I've even since having that internship experience and coming back to school, I was just working with a friend the other day and she was reaching out to a company and she asked me to look at her email and I was able to point out quite a few different things. I was like, okay, you don't need to use this word. I would be more direct here, like taking what I learned from my
Yeah,
boss and applying that and recognizing now I'm able to recognize in my own emails kind of the mistakes that I was making and it does make a huge difference.
absolutely, for sure. So, on that kind of same note, and you touched on this a little bit, but how do you think that internships are preparing you for your future career?
I would say that internships give you the ability to really practice what you're learning in school and also, kind of like I said earlier, help you understand yourself a lot better and understand where you want to go in your future career. I think it's so important for students to be able to practice a lot of different facets of the professional marketplace. And when you only have one narrow view of what your career could look like, you're missing out on so many different opportunities, especially in the business world. The opportunities are truly endless for where you can end up and what you can do. And you're not even limited to your major, really. So I think it's really important for internships, for students to get internships, because it really allows them to practice what they're learning in the classroom and also just grow into a new version of themselves and understand that they have so many more opportunities that they could never really think of when you're just, in the classroom learning the one major that you're in.
Absolutely, for sure. So, you've already given us a ton of advice in this short amount of time, and we're already at the end, which is
Oh
crazy
my
because I feel
gosh.
like we've been talking for like 5 minutes.
I know.
So, Bitsy, to kind of end this out here, do you have any piece of advice that you would give to students that are currently looking for internships or will be looking for internships?
Yes, I would say I have maybe two things. So the first thing
Perfect.
is to be intentional about your internship search. Like I said, I probably applied to 11 to 15, and I will be completely honest, I was not very intentional. I was kind of applying to anything and everything. And I think that's part of the reason it took me so long to land in a position that I really enjoyed. And I would say now when I'm applying, starting my application process for jobs, I'm trying to be a lot more intentional about it. So don't just apply to any company. Try and find companies that actually align with your values. And then you'll be more inclined to put in the extra work of creating a resume that will pass through their systems, putting in the effort to create a portfolio site that will make a great impression on them and make yourself stand out to those companies. So I would really say quality over quantity and be intentional.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then the second thing I would say is take advantage of the gift of being in college because I think it opens up so many doors of networking that you probably wouldn't have if you weren't attending this university. So take advantage of what the Career Development Center offers because that is honestly the main reason that I landed in the role that I did this past summer. And I know for a fact I would not have gotten that if I didn't meet my future boss in person. So I would say take advantage of the network that you have. And even if there's companies on campus who you might not be interested in working with, reach out to them, talk to them, because you never know who people might know. So they might not
Yep.
be the person that you're trying to connect with, but they might know the person that you are trying to connect with. So I would say don't underestimate the power of leveraging this time that you have in college to really network with people.
Absolutely. I could not have said that better myself. I, my own experience, all of my positions have always been through networking. So it really is about getting to know people, getting your name out there that
Hmm.
gets you those positions. So,
Yeah, totally
well,
agree.
Bitsy, I appreciate you coming on so much. So thank you for going through this interview with me.
Yeah,
Next week we will have Elrose Steel on, so we're very excited to have an
awesome.
employer, and definitely stay tuned over the next couple weeks. As we're going to have quite a few Facebook Lives. So, thank you everyone so much for joining us. Thank you, Bitsy, again for letting me
Thank you
interview
for
you.
having me.
Absolutely. And I hope everyone has a really great weekend.